I was searched around. Honestly, I just wanted to do something where I found somebody with a national name saying something negative about the Texans free agency, and I couldn't find it. And it makes me a little bit sick because I feel like these two timing backstabbers are going to get us at the first sign of adversity. And I'm taking names and I'm remembering them. Okay, so don't go try to waffle. I don't know how you feel about the Texans right now. Pat McAfee, I love obviously. I'd never accuse him of waffling. But here's Pat McAfee on the Texans free agency so far.
The Texans and what they've been able to do. They're active, and it feels like D'Amico is going to be able to recruit and get people to come to Houston. Texas has the no state income tax. I do believe they're one of the states that has that, so that's quite a benefit. But if you look at what they've been able to do, I did not expect this from the Houston. The Houston Texans were supposed to suck for 10 years. Now they're seemingly making smart moves and getting better every single day, Lombo. Do you see it that way?
So he was asking a question, basically asking Lombardi to confirm what McAfee was saying. I think part of it though too is, and it's weird to say this, I think in some ways CJ Stroud has almost been under discussed as an element for all this. I think that if CJ had come in and not necessarily been so astoundingly good, would Nick have been as aggressive as they've been? And I say that knowing that it's not like they've not gone out and spent or made the moves of some of the more notoriously aggressive teams in free agency, but the Daniil Hunter, the Nico Autry, even the Joe Mixon trade to a certain degree, as well as just the other moves. I think people combine that with CJ Stroud, as Pat was saying, and it feels good. Let's hear if Lombardi agrees with Pat's question.
D'Amico Ryans has taken that 49er approach that we're going to put money in defensive linemen. That's what we're going to do. That's what wins the game. That's what wins the game in the fourth quarter. That's what we have to do. Now, Greenard's a good player. They lost him, but they replaced him with Danielle Hunter. And I think, to me, they have a formula on what they want to do. They're following the San Francisco blueprint, which has been successful.
Okay, I got a little bit confused when he said that they're following the San Francisco blueprint, which has been successful. Well, you got to remember that when you talk about drafting defensive linemen, John Lynch took the job in 2017. So Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch took the job in 2017. Eric Armstead and DeForest Buckner, those defensive linemen, if this is the San Francisco strategy, they'd been drafted in 2015 and 2016, but they were very big parts of the 49ers making those runs while John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan were there. John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan have drafted Solomon Thomas and Javon Kinlaw as their defensive linemen, and Nick Bosa. Don't forget about Nick Bosa. So they've drafted 3 defensive linemen in the first round. So I guess you could argue about just how successful they've been with those first 2 that they drafted. But like obviously Nick Bosa is a huge part of the engine that drives that. And DeForest Buckner was for a while. Eric Armstead was for a while. I don't know if it needs to be San Francisco East or anything like that. I personally am biased because I was a defensive lineman, but I love the concept in theory of building up from the front back, partly because I think pass rushers especially, if they're genuinely good, they're consistent. Like they're going to provide that when they're healthy. They're going to provide that pass rush every year. Cornerbacks, it's not as consistent. It's not necessarily, other than for the genuinely astoundingly good. It's funny. You go around the league and talk to people about cornerbacks, awesome cornerbacks, and I feel like every fan base feels like, I remember that time he got beat. And there's some truth to that. It's a little bit hit or miss in any given year, and some of it's just the luck of the draw with the matchup. So I like having that engine up front and those guys doing it. So this is Trevor Sakema, PFF NFL analyst on the Dan Patrick Show.
I really enjoyed the moves that the Houston Texans have made. Obviously, you go to quarterback like CJ Stroud last year, he hits the ground run and absolutely explodes. And what I love about what the Texans are doing is they're seeing that, and they're not saying, all right, cool, we're ahead of schedule a little bit. This is good. They're all in. Like, they're ready for this.
And like a lot of you have said too, somebody made a good point. I think the Texans were surprised by how good CJ was so quickly. The turnaround and rebuild was at light speed. Yeah, I think they went in probably expecting any number of things that could happen, but for CJ to remember, not get off to a fast start, this is what's so dicey sometimes about life in the NFL is that sometimes the guys that are the most conscientious don't get off to the fastest starts because they're trying to do everything right. Like whenever you pick up a new skill, think about trying to swing a golf club. Like you might be natural and you go out and you swing a club and you hit the ball really well, and then you start to refine your skills, and it's the most frustrating thing in the world. And like I think anything that takes a lot of fine motor skill can be like that. And CJ, to his credit, took the hard way, which is you try to learn everything from the ground up and do it fundamentally sound and everything like that. You're not going to necessarily jump out ahead and wow people immediately if you're not an incredible athlete. But he did just brick by brick. He just kept building. And you're right, though. I think it ends up being lightning fast when you look at maybe what Caserio or D'Amico thought, whatever their horizon was for how long it might take to turn it around. It happened very, very fast. So the next thing that Sakema talks about was just the feel of this draft or the feel of this free agency period for the Texans.
Defensive centric free agency. I specifically love, okay, they probably thought they were going to lose Jonathan Grenard. They do. They go out and get Danielle Hunter. And then they also go out and get the Nico Autry. So, man, it's just like boom, boom, all these moves on the defensive side of the ball. It gives them the chance to be super flexible with what they're going to do in the NFL draft.
Part of that, though, too, is if you look at the people the Texans did sign, it looks like they had this defensive-centric strategy. And certainly, D'Amico had already said that they were going to build the defensive line out. But however in they were on Saquon Barkley, you can't ignore that or discount that. Keenan Allen, though, especially, they made what was actually a better offer than the Bears, technically, or at least, if you approximate the value. They made a better offer than the Bears did, but for whatever reason, the Chargers wanted to send Keenan Allen out of the division. Like, they made some plays for offensive guys, and I always keep that in mind. They made that play for Keenan Allen, so whatever that means for the draft or remaining free agency, obviously that factors in. So I think other than the defensive line, I don't know how much they went into this free agency saying we've got to focus on defense, or if that's just kind of the way that it worked out. Next one is Pete Prisco. Now, Pete, I know from going way back, and Pete can be a little bit surly and cynical at times, but he does not like blow smoke up anybody's butt. He was pretty bullish on the Texans offseason. This is CBS Sports.
And they signed Danielle Hunter in free agency.
And a bunch of other guys that can play. Danico Autry will help their defense a great deal. Al Shahir, the linebacker who, they had in San Francisco when D'Amico Ryans was there, comes from Tennessee, adds them some nice juice at that level as well. So, and Jeff Okudah, who hasn't lived up to the expectations, but has capability of being a solid starting corner.
I got to tell you, that 1 year, $4.8 million for Jeff Okudah. There's being a top 10 pick, it just keeps paying dividends. I mean, that's a nice price tag for a 1 year deal for a guy that's still kind of trying to prove who he is in the NFL. It also shows you just where the cap has gone, that this is the price you pay for a guy to come in and basically try out. I'm cool with it. I'm not a grumpy old man about it. Not one bit. Not one bit. I played with I had a Fred Hoagland who played for the Oilers for a little bit. He was a tight ends coach when I was a rookie in Jacksonville. And I remember talking to him about his first couple of years in the NFL. I don't think he was a rookie with the Oilers, but his wife, who was a teacher, was making more money than he was his rookie year in the NFL. So things have changed a little bit. Next one was Pete Prisco. I think he talks about how it was all about the defense too.
Bringing back Schultz was big for them. You get Tank Dell back. They're going to score points. This team is moving in the right direction. I love what they're doing. I give them an A.
That's just the third team, I believe, that you've given an A to. The only others were the Falcons and the Bucks.
Falcons and the Bucks. So only the third team Pete Prisco gave an A to. This is where I'm going to accept the A. I will accept your A, Professor. And here's why. I don't like it when the teams that just absurdly outspend everybody else get A's in free agency, because anybody can do that. It takes a little bit of judgment and discretion to fill in holes, but not go after every single piece of bling that you want. Like honestly, L'Jarius Sneed, that's one where I haven't seen or heard a lot of chatter from Texans fans upset that the Texans didn't pick up L'Jarius Sneed. I think you're at the point now where, look, you can see where they are on the cap. You can see that they've spent a good chunk of money. Yes, you could trade for L'Jarius Sneed and finagle away pretty easily to fit him in future years. But I think that when you start looking out at your time horizons and think about paying Nico Collins, think about paying Derek Stingley, hopefully if he stays healthy, that you just can't buy everything off the shelf that you want in free agency because it comes back to bite you. So that's where they are right now. They're getting very, very good marks, but it's not just because they spent so exorbitantly. Same thing happens with drafts, by the way. If a team has 2 first-round picks, they almost always get an A because people look at it. Oh, well, look at that. You drafted 2 guys who I know and watched highlights of. Of course, that's a good draft. Brilliant. Even last year, the Texans, even the people who wanted to criticize the Will Anderson trade value, which I get, I understand that, they would still give the Texans an A. They would say they vastly overspent, but my God, look at what they got. They're the 2nd and 3rd picks overall. A.
It's been too much fucking CJ love on this pod, bro.
I'm going to bring back a favorite of mine, and this is Zaire Franklin, the linebacker for the Colts, who has a podcast, In the Trenches. EJ Speed is on with him a lot, and T.Y. Hilton was on this particular episode. And it got really interesting because Zaire Franklin asked T.Y. Hilton who a young receiver that T.Y. Hilton sees himself in is.
But who's a receiver that you feel like reminds you of yourself?
I'm gonna tell you a receiver and a quarterback that reminds me of me in 12. It's still early, but I'm telling you right now, I'm gonna make some of y'all mad, but it is what it is. I'm gonna speak facts.
Don't do it. I think I know you. Don't.
I know exactly.
Don't do it. Don't do it. Please don't do it.
That's crazy, bro.
Don't do it. Don't do it.
Go ahead. Go. So that means y'all on the same page. So that means y'all on the same page.
Okay, it got really loud for like 30 seconds. So I cut that out for you. But Zaire Franklin and EJ Speed have spoken very highly of CJ Stroud before on this. Some of you saw that. It was very nice. It's very nice. They're talking about how much they respect and appreciate how good he is, but how much they hate him because of that. So they know where T.Y. Hilton is going with this. And T.Y. Hilton, I'm gonna forgive this because he says some nice things about Tank Dell, but he gets in a little shot at Houston on his way to saying nice things about Tank Dell and CJ Stroud.
Who? Go ahead.
They're a part of the city that I own, right? Okay.
Yeah, the city that he owns. All right, again, I'll put up a clown mask or something of him walking in Energy Stadium. Yes, he owned us. And this is why the compliment means that much more. And I respect T.Y. Hilton. I respect that he's able to recognize game. He's not going to let any personal feelings about the city of Houston, which he once owned and no longer owns.
CJ and Tank Dell, bro.
Niggas ain't like that.
Yeah. Listen, them two right there, bro. Like, I feel like they're more off-camera guys. You feel me? Like, well, off-script guys. You feel me? Like, CJ could scramble. Luck could scramble. CJ's looking for one person. Luck could scramble. He's looking for one person.
I hate that he just said that because I agree.
She said, I hate that he just said that because I agree. And Zaire Franklin, the last time they talked about CJ Stroud was just going off about the Nico Collins catch in the play-in game at the end of the season, where it looked like CJ was trying to throw the ball out of bounds. And then it looked like it was going to be a definite pick. And then it looked like, oh my gosh, he just threw it to where only Nico Collins could get to it. That it was incredible. But that also, as T.Y. is pointing out, about CJ only looking for Tank, I started to bristle up a little bit there because I do think that CJ's done a pretty good job of spreading the ball around, but T.Y. makes a very good point here.
And it's crazy because, like, bro, I was watching one of the games and CJ scrambled and just threw it to Tank.
I know exactly what you're talking about. Back right corner.
Yes, sir. Exactly just threw it to Tank. I say, well, I got on my phone. I tell my homeboy, I say, yo, that look like me and Luck, bro. Like, no cap. Like, that's different. And as I kept watching them, they kept going off script. And then when they get on script, like, it's just like, man, how are we gonna start these two?
That was one where CJ scrambled out and Tank was making that second or third move downfield. Like, as CJ's setting to throw up, Tank is just starting to make his cut on the scramble drill. and ends up hitting him in the end zone. Like that kind of stuff, and some of the that ESP they have between them. That part's really cool. And then Ty goes on to talk about like what's going to happen when Tank comes back. You know, Nico developed that relationship with CJ also after Tank left. We saw it in the Colts game. What's going to happen when Tank comes back? I know, Ty. All right, I'm excited about it too. I'm glad that Pat McAfee and Ty Hilton can share so much in our excitement, and not to mention elevating the public profile of the Houston Texans. It's very nice of the Indianapolis Colts. Thank you very much. Next one was Zaire. Zaire Franklin simply gets sick of the CJ love.
I respect it.
It's been too much fucking CJ love on this pod, bro. I ain't gonna lie. It really ain't. You know what? Now I'm back bullying because I was trying to be cool with him. I apologize and all that shit.
I'm gonna give him his props.
Now I'm not friends with him and none of that. Like, now I'm gonna bump you in if I see you anywhere now. It was not that.
So
now,
CJ,
bro.
my dog.
Bro.
Yeah, so EJ Speed went to talk about how he was at the Browns playoff game. I think he has there's some kind of connection there, either with the agent or somebody else, and how nice CJ's parents were, and they talked about CJ growing up. It's really this EJ Speed and Zaire Franklin podcast, two Colts players, might be the most pro Texans podcast out there. I highly encourage you to visit. I will link. I've got it all compiled at the end of this live stream. I'll link it below. As Daniel Bartlett says, this is a nice podcast setup. It's refreshing. They should lift us up. We lifted their franchise up to new heights for a decade.